So we have already started with the last meditation that I published, an exploration of boundaries, and I find this one of the most interesting and rich kind of exploration in our meditation practice, because it becomes obvious very quickly that what we call boundaries is more of an idea rather than something we can actually observe. I mean, our mind is so conditioned by our visual field, the way we perceive the world visually, and when we look at the world, there is the appearance that in the world there should be different separate objects, and it's very difficult by just looking at things to notice that actually the object itself is a product of our mind. The object is not something that is out there, but object is something that the mind makes and defines in the environment. So when we see an object, that is actually a function of our mind projecting some kind of meaning, some kind of function on some sense perception on our environment, and that may have some evolutionary cause reasons, but it's not really important to this for the sake of our exploration. So before we can mess with it also on a visual level, and maybe in a couple of weeks or so I will publish also some exercises that we can do to kind of notice that also on a visual level is possible, and it's quite easy and intuitive to see that objects are not a reality, but they're something that our mind is making up all the time, and we can see our mind functioning that way. We can see that happen. It's actually very obvious. But it's easier to see it with other senses, and especially with the internal feeling of our body. Because as we shut our eyes and get in touch with our body and begin to inhabit our body first person, and not to look at it as we are used to look at it in a mirror out there, as an object in the environment, as some kind of objective reality that has all the qualities of objects, so a shape, a color, different shades, and a kind of opaque and surface and a particular structure. We actually realize by inhabiting our body first person that from the most intimate and personal point of view we have on this reality, on the reality of the body, we can't really tell the shape of the body. And when we close our eyes and get in touch with the body, actually each time we do that, the body at first seems to acquire very different shapes. It depends a lot on the physiological state of the body, and it will appear to have a different shape. It will feel like it has a different shape. And so many people report during this kind of meditation, when I lead some workshops, that they feel their body expanding, or they feel the body really small, or that there is a sense of losing boundaries in the body. And this last little insight that we can have, the fact that we can't observe any boundaries, is something very interesting for the sake of our practice, for the sake of our meditation and our exploration of the inner world. At this point, there's not even a need to call it meditation. Meditation is just an excuse for us to have something to talk about. But actually, what we are doing here is just taking time to look at reality from the most subjective and personal and intimate point of view possible. Okay, so we started with the previous meditation to see that as we mention every part of the body, if we put aside the body image that we have and that may arise for most people, I'd say, then we get in touch with the body in a kind of more spacious way. So the body doesn't really feel like an object anymore, or a kind of entity which has clear boundaries and color and a kind of density, but it starts to feel as more like an empty space, as a spaciousness in which we observe all the different sensations related to the body. So the body is not the sensation. The sensation is something of itself, by itself, and it has to be kind of looked at on its own. It's a different reality that we're looking at there. But the body itself is more like this wide open space in which we see all kinds of sensation arising. And so that is the first realization, is that I cannot observe a boundary in this body. I just can't see it. I may think I have one. I may have an image of myself as some kind of very clear-cut and well-defined object out there, but actually that is not how I experience myself intimately, from my own perspective. And that is the first realization, and it's the first exploration we can do with this topic of boundaries. And then we can bring it really far, because the boundary is not just the boundary between the body and the environment, right? So once the body loses its boundary, there is this sense of becoming one with the environment, of noticing simply that the space of the body, the spaciousness of the body, is not divided from the spaciousness we perceive as our environment. You know, the kind of space that surrounds us and embraces us at any given moment. And that is a very beautiful realization. In a way, it makes us participate in the environment, and it can bring a lot of feelings of beauty, of expansion, of even relief from being kind of having been all this time stuck in this little boundary which we imposed on the body. The body itself, from its own perspective, actually feels open, free, spacious. There's a lot of air coming through there. Okay? And it's important not to take this as a truth, as an idea, but this is actually something we are living at each moment. So we should go back. If we feel kind of like resistant to this idea of the body having no boundaries, then it's important that we just go and watch. We go and see. Do we find one? When we close our eyes, we put aside any possible image that comes up to define, to represent the body in our mind. Is there a boundary? Do we find one? No. All we find is a sensation. All we find is a thought. These are things that are clearly observable in our environment, but there's no such thing as a boundary. It's just a thought. It's just a sensation. And from there we can begin to explore different aspects of separation. So there's another separation, and this has to do with the meditation that I will publish today. And it's the separation, the apparent separation between the body and the mind. So the more mental realm of our life and the more physical realm. So is there a difference between the two? And at the onset, we have to acknowledge that we all believe that we have a body and that we have a mind, right? And even the way we speak, I have a body, there's kind of this separation. There is I and there is this body which I have. There's this clear sense of the body and the mind being two very separate things, two very separate realities. So is this true? Is this something we can actually feel and observe in our life? When we stop and we start looking at the body, is that something we see? Okay, and this is the context of the next meditation I'm going to publish. And after that, we'll go and just look and other boundaries which we instinctively project on ourselves, on our environment. One interesting boundary which we cannot do as a personal meditation, but which is also, there are also very interesting exercises we can explore, is the boundary between me and the other. And we'll take time to explain this in the next videos or a meditation that I will publish. What is it that separates me from the other person? Okay, the separation between me and the other person is felt very strongly, very clearly when there is an intense desire or an intense aversion to the other person. Okay, I feel the separation. I either have this powerful longing, something I want to grasp there, or I really want to reject what's happening, and so I'm kind of pushing away this boundary. But when we have the time and leisure to, and a person that may be willing to do this exploration with us, can we really find a boundary that is not a visual impression? You know, the visual impression that we are separated as two different bodies. Can we find any other clue that would prove that yes, we are two separate consciousnesses, two separate entities? And this we'll explain, you know, with some other exercises which we'll publish in a few days, in a few weeks. Thank you.